about you? Welcome to the Village Oak Tree once again. And this is for July 3rd, 2024. I'm your host, Terrence O'Donnell, and I wish to thank everyone who is watching or listening for joining me today. And this week, I've got my two friends here, and we're going to kind of do a roundtable on current events. We're going to throw some stuff out there, let everybody answer, talk about what's going on, and kind of take it from there. So let me bring my friends up and let's get going. Hey, Mitch.
Hi, Terrence. How are you doing today?
All right.
Hi,
So
Terrence.
everybody,
Hi,
the
Mitch.
gang's all here.
Yeah.
So let's start at the beginning of last week. Okay. The biggest thing that was all over the news last Monday was the cluster bomb that get dropped in Sevastopol at the beach. Okay. Killed some kids, injured a whole lot of people, some other adults. And of course, all of our favorite characters on Judging Freedom were all over it all week. And, the big thing about that is, I don't know if you guys are aware of this, but cluster bombs are illegal. Okay. Yep. Now, that doesn't mean that everybody's on board with that because the United States didn't sign that memo. All right. Neither did Russia. China, maybe, I don't know. But the two biggies, Russia and United States, didn't sign that memo. So although they don't want to use them as far as it goes, obviously they are. So do you guys know what cluster bombs are?
Francis, you want to go?
Vaguely. I have to admit, I've not really heard. I mean, I've heard of them, but never really looked them up. So,
okay,
you want to define?
Well, understand? I'm retired Army, so I know a lot about them.
Okay.
Tell me if I have it right. Then I think it's one device that fragments into several. I would call them bomblets that each can explode. Is it something like that?
Yeah, that's a pretty broad view. So, and you're right. Okay, so a cluster bomb basically is a warhead that's packed full of these round balls. All right. They're about the size of kind of like softballs. And what happens is once they get to their target area, it's like an airburst. So once they get to the target area, a computer inside releases all of these cluster bombs over a scattered area. Now they just drop. They just drop on the ground. And a lot of times they don't explode. Okay. Now, you understand, these things are anti-personnel bombs. Okay? Right. They're only designed for one thing, killing people. All right? So typically in the past, when they were using them on battlefields, they would drop them over enemy positions and they would unload and they would blow up a lot of soldiers. But the big thing is they have a lot of these that don't explode on contact. So now you have a child who comes running down the beach and sees this shiny little ball on the beach. He picks it up and boom. Okay. When I was in Afghanistan in 2002, they were everywhere. And it was a mess trying to get them cleaned up. But the idea was these kids out in these villages in Afghanistan were picking these things up and getting killed. All right.
Oh, my.
And the government, the United States, oh, yeah, we're going to go clean them up. They couldn't get them there fast enough. All right. And so it was a real mess. Of course, the United States is not the only one that had this problem. So I'm going to, go over the other side of the thing because the Russians left a lot of toys behind as well. One of the Russians' favorite anti-personnel things was they had a couple of them. One of what they call bouncing Bettys. Okay. The Americans used them too. So what is you step on this thing and it releases an explosive and it's designed to come up at about waist high and cut you in half. Okay. The other part is the Russians used to build what they call toe poppers, and they're designed to look like little toys, and they're about this big. So they would drop them out there in various places, and kids would pick them up or step on them and get to playing with them. And of course, they pick it up and it will blow their hands off. If you stepped on one, it'll blow half your foot off. Okay. But like I said, this is how cruel these nation states are. All right. They don't care about children. They don't care about people. Just, wipe them out. They don't care. So that's what it's come down to. So you take all of that in context and you drop in a cluster bomb. It supposedly was headed for that air base north of the beach, got knocked off course supposedly by Russian air defense. And of course, they didn't quite get knocked out, and it got over the beach, dropped its payload, and there you go, a lot of dead people, right? So
how many people died, by the way? How many people died?
Well, my understanding was 5 kids got killed, and a bunch of adults, a dozen or so adults, 100 some odd people got hurt.
Wow.
And and that's and to be honest with you, that's pretty good considering. Like I said, these cluster bombs are designed to take out battalions when they drop. So
Well, here's the thing: if you're going to use a cluster bomb that's designed to kill people, why are you bombing infrastructure with it?
Well, that's a good question. So the deal is, I listened to all this stuff that they were talking about last week. So the deal is, the Ukrainians picked the targets, according to what they were saying. The Ukrainians pick the targets. They send that information back to whoever's programming these missile launchers. And, that's the Americans or
Yep, that's what I was going to say.
Or the EU, the NATO troops, but most likely the Americans. And these guys aren't wearing uniforms. Okay. So anyway, the targeting is sent back to wherever in the rear. It's uploaded into the launchers and they're just launched. Okay. Whoever's doing the launching basically has no morals. All they're doing is programming the data. They don't care where the missiles go. They're saying, "What's not my problem? It's whatever the Ukrainians want to do." Yada yada yada. So end of discussion. Gone. So the Ukrainians, are at fault in this as far as target picking. But again, they're only, according to the U.S. and everything that I've been reading the last few weeks, they're only supposed to be targeting military installations across the river, across the border. No civilian targets, right? That's what they say, all right? So the other part of this is, nobody really knows for sure. They think that this missile that dropped its payload just got knocked off course by the air defense systems, but then nobody really knows for sure. So are the Ukrainians targeting civilian positions? Nobody really knows, and nobody's talking. Meanwhile, the Russians are saying, okay, that's a red line for us. We're going to start retaliating. So there was a rumor, unconfirmed, that one of the United States' what we used to call, I forget exactly. Basically they're using drones now. Now, airwax. They used to use airwax flights with people in them. Nowadays, they take the same thing and the same intelligence and they load it into drones. They're called Hawkeyes. So these Hawkeye drones are the ones that are feeding the GPS data and signals to the whatever bombs are going. So basically, they're using Hawkeye drones to pick the targets, and they're using Hawkeye drones to monitor when the bombs hit, send everything back to wherever. So anyway, you take that, and supposedly, because like I said, the Americans aren't admitted anything, the Russians took out one of their Hawkeyes over the Baltic.
Mm-hmm.
Right? Now that would make sense. Retaliation. Right? But the Americans are never going to admit that, because if they do, then obviously that's an escalation, and they're trying to avoid that. So I'm waiting right now, just to kind of give everybody an idea. I'm waiting to see what's going to happen this coming week, to see if there's going to be anything else come up. I mean, the issue with Sevastopol is done. It's a done deal. All right, it happened. You can't go back in time and fix that. Now, whether the Russians took out a Hawkeye or not, I wanted to bet that they probably did. Mm-hmm. And obviously, the U.S. is never going to admit it because of what could happen. The United States right now is becoming more worried about public image these days. So stuff like this, having one of their Hawkeyes knocked out, would look bad on them. So they're not going to admit it. Okay. All right. So, with that, again, it goes back to what I just said. I'm waiting to see over the next week to 2 weeks to see what's going to happen. Are we going to see any more Ukrainians dumping stuff across the border, or is everybody satisfied at this point? And okay, yeah, we dumped a cluster bomb. You took out a Hawkeye. All right, we're even. Everybody, we'll go back to where we were. This is what I want to know. So I'm waiting. You know what I mean? I'm waiting to see if there's anything going on, because the Russians never get in any big hurry. When they decide to do something really dramatic, they draw it out, and typically will pick something out and say, all right, this is what's this, and they'll pick something, and then they'll make a big deal about it when they do it. But it generally takes them a couple of weeks to sort it all out. So again, I'm waiting. I'm just waiting to see what happens. That's my biggest. So here's the other part of that story. Last week, the Biden government authorized contractors to put boots on the ground in Ukraine. Okay, so here's a question for you guys. Do you know the difference between an active duty soldier and a contractor?
I think it's just a uniform, if it's a government paid uniform or not.
Well, you're pretty close. Okay, so let me tell you how this stuff works. Contractors typically work for the CIA or the NSA, or as a rule. Now they are a private company like Blackhawk, other entities. Blackhawk being the most notorious one. But these guys are private contractors. In other words, they are usually ex-soldiers, usually ex-special forces or rangers, stuff like that. And they are hired on as security consultants for private companies. All right. So in this case, as far as Ukraine goes, if they are putting contractors in Ukraine, these are the guys that are running the missile launchers and doing the support. These guys are not logisticians. They don't do logistics. Okay. They're not handling bombs. They're not running sodas into the soldiers, all that kind of stuff. No, these guys are what I call the button pushers. They're the ones doing the targeting. They're the ones setting up all the missile launchers, and they are wearing uniforms and, beards, maybe a little bit long hair. But to be honest with you, if you look at them, if you were to see one on the street, I know I would anyway. If I saw one on the street, I know exactly who they were. Okay. They stick out like a sore thumb, even if they're not wearing uniforms.
Well, it seems that the U.S. is escalating in increments, right? They're sending the weapons, and now with people. Right.
So here's the thing. If I were Russia, obviously Russia knows about these guys. They can't not know about it. Okay. My thing is, if the U.S. is in fact going to do this, which they probably are, okay. There have been contractors in there, up in the last couple of years, but they've been all rear echelon, legit, like I'd supply people. All right. They're managing, bombs coming across the border. They're setting up warehouses. That's all they've been doing. So now we actually have contract operators coming in and actually doing stuff. These guys are, in fact, what I call combat ready. Okay. So if I was Russia, those are the guys I'd be looking at, and I would be looking to take them out. And as I mentioned in my little rant this morning that I posted, my Sunday rant, if that happens, these guys are not going to be coming back through Dover in a flag draped coffin. Okay, you will. If they get hit, you're never going to know about it because they're contractors.
I have seen Russia start employing the 3,000-pound bombs.
Yeah.
And I understand they're devastating.
Oh, yes.
When one of those hits, from what I heard on, I think it was the Duran, it knocks the building down and everybody within maybe half a mile. Yeah. I don't know how bad it is.
Here's the thing. Russia, I doubt seriously if Russia will deploy anything like that on civilian facilities. I doubt seriously if they're going to level Kharkiv or Kiev with those. But taking out, entrenched Ukrainian soldiers on the front lines. Oh yeah, absolutely. Absolutely.
I can't imagine what a 3,000 bomb looks like, sounds like.
Well, if they drop it on a bunch of defense works, it's going to wipe them out. You'll have a crater huge crater. Okay, and whatever's inside that bomb radius is done. It's you're nothing but wet goo. All right.
Oh my goodness.
And I hate to sound so dramatic, but that's what it is. Right? There's nothing left. All right. So there's nothing left to bury. Let's put it that way.
But I can't figure out why. Why are we doing so much for Ukraine when negotiations could stop this?
Because the United States has had a thing for Russia for the last 60 years. Okay? Ever since the 1950s, since Joe McCarthy was a senator from Wisconsin. It's all been about the communist scare. It evolved from there. And this whole business in the 60s with the Cold War in the 70s and all that stuff, it's been just a thing ever since. It's part of the American DNA now. The Russians are the boogeyman. We have to take them out. And so let me tell you how this works. Go ahead.
But didn't it disappear sometime? Like, that there was less of this animus, this Cold War animus between, say, 1989 and 1984 with Gorbachev and I think about 2010, right?
It did.
I mean, there's less of it.
What you got to understand, it did die off. Okay, we had a sort of kind of a stalemate, peace, whatever you want to call it. Mm-hmm. We rolled back the nukes, made all kinds of treaties, and that's just it. But in 1997, we signed the Minsk Agreement, and everybody seemed to think everything was going to be okay. Well, guess what? The United States reneged on it. Okay, and their biggest thing was they couldn't let that stand. They just couldn't do it. So they started pushing NATO further west or further east towards Russia. Okay, setting up military installations as far as they could go. Well, of course, up until 2008, Ukraine belonged to Russia more or less. So obviously NATO couldn't go there, but they wanted to. So they instituted a coup, got rid of the pro-Russian guy, put Zelensky in there, and he's all about being part of the EU. He's all about being buddies with the U.S. Oh yeah, U.S. You want to put stuff in here? Yeah, no problem. Come on. Well, the United States didn't have to ask twice. They started rolling stuff in, and that's the big thing with Russia. The only reason the biggest reason why Russia took over Crimea in 2014 was because NATO was pushing in his back door. And Russia said, Putin said, hey, okay, you can't do this. And this is our retaliation for you pushing the boundaries. He took over Crimea, and Obama, being the wuss that he was, didn't do anything about it. He cried and moaned and, oh, you're such a bad person, and let it go. So the Russians have been there ever since. And now, instead of letting it go, the war hawks in Washington said, no, we got to push this. We got to keep pushing this. And so they kept doing it. And finally, Russia just said, hey, enough's enough. Okay. You guys have gone too far. And here we are. 2 years ago, they decided that, hey, you know what? You guys have crossed too many lines. We have to push back. And well, here we are. So again, it goes back to what's going to happen the next couple of weeks. Nobody knows. And Russia likes it that way.
Well, the other thing to me, and I'm just thinking out loud, is that Russia can escalate horizontally.
Yes.
So next thing the Houthis get something big that can probably take out a carrier.
Uh-huh.
Right. I don't know. I'm just
No, and you're right. Loud. There's a couple of ways they can go. So one, they could start arming some of the militias in Central Africa to do more damage.
Yeah.
Okay. That's a real possibility. And in Niger especially, since they just kicked the Americans out of there. Second, Syria. Okay. There's a lot of speculation right now as are the Russians going to start arming the militias over there to start taking down some of these forward outposts that the Americans have to go after ISIS, which ISIS is, basically done it these days. But, the idea is the Americans use these terrorist groups, loose. I use that term loosely because most of it is they get all the local warlord over there who says, hey, you want a little money? And this is the CIA and the NSA. Well, mostly the CIA. They go over there and say, hey, you want to make a little money? Get a bunch of your tribesmen together and go attack this whatever. Okay? We'll give you some money if you go do that. Hey, you know what? These guys don't care. They'll make money. They don't care. And that's what they do. Right? So then they start something. So then the Americans get all upset.
That's how ISIS got started, right?
That's right. The Americans started it, and it took off. Right? It's another one of those American mistakes. Okay? They made a lot of them. But basically, that's how. And so that's what everybody's worried about right now is that Russia could be coming in behind and setting up these, militia groups over there in Syria and start pecking away at some of these American outposts and various other targets. Okay. Anybody that's pro-US over there, basically. Right. So who knows? And like, Miss said, the Houthis, they may get a supply of upgraded armaments. Who knows?
Who knows?
Courtesy of Iran. Because now the north-south pipeline between Russia and Iran is up and running. So it's one of those deals. It wouldn't be hard to get them stuff.
Yeah. Okay.
So there's that. So there's, like I said, there are lots of possibilities. There's the thing with North Korea too. Okay.
Oh boy.
Yeah, exactly. All right.
Oh boy.
Everybody's watching that one really close because that's he's a madman over there, and it wouldn't take much for him to launch something.
But it was so provocative. I think if I read it correctly.
Yeah.
If I read it correctly, I think the only military partnership. Yeah, the only military partnership Russia has is with North Korea.
Oh no.
Is there's more?
Oh yeah, there is a lot more. So right now,
Russia has
a partnership with Niger.
I didn't know that.
There's Russian troops in Nigeria right now, and the Nigerian government kicked the Americans out. This was about a month ago, right? It's not just Niger, but there's a couple other countries over there that are welcoming the Russians with open arms. Okay, it's all about the money for them. That's all. Okay, Russia has offered to help them with better trade deals and various other things for certain concessions, and they're not. So the difference is right now, Russia and China both are working the same angle. We're going to help all these underdeveloped countries, and we're going to be a lot nicer about it than the Americans were. Okay. And hey, these people are lapping it up like crazy. Now, some of the countries got in on the early part of the Silk and Belt Road initiative from China, borrowed a bunch of money from China and had trouble paying it back. So they found out the hard way that China actually, when the debt comes due and you're overdue, China takes a little harsher tactics with them than the Americans were, as far as it goes. But as far as the lending requirements and all that, they're not as strict with lending out money as the West and the Americans. So there's that. I mean, some of that's worked out, some of it hasn't. There's a couple of countries over around Southeast Asia that are struggling to pay the debts back to China right now, and China's making life difficult for them. So who knows? There's some stuff going on about that. But still, but here's the other part of that. Military cooperation wise, Russia, China, and North Korea right now, the three biggies. All right. Those are three biggies. And on a second level, India. Okay. On a secondary level, not quite as high as those, but on a secondary level, India is trying to play neutral, but they're trying to run their own game. But at the same time, they are more favorable for things coming out of Russia and China right now. They don't really like the Americans that much. They don't like the West all that much. And, so there's a lot of that kind of
China.
No. Well, that's the other part of it is that, yes, India and China had that border spat, which is still going on to a degree. They aren't beating each other up anymore, but there's still a lot of tension at that one spot in the Himalayas. And that's part of this whole BRICS thing was one of the deals. It's one of those kind of backdoor deals that BRICS in itself said, "Hey, we need to work this out so we can all cooperate together and China and India agreed to kind of let things lie the way they are. We're not going to push. You're not going to push. Everybody's happy. But meanwhile, we'll keep our troops right there, keep an eye on each other, that kind of thing. Right. And that's fine. As long as it works for them, that's the big thing. But here's the thing. A lot of these countries now are starting to look at the United States and the West like, we don't like you guys. The IMF has screwed us. The World Bank has screwed us, and we're done. We're getting better terms out of the new banks, the central bank system out of BRICS. We're going that way. I'm waiting for Turkey to drop the hammer and saying, "Hey, we're gonna go this way." We're dropping the EU. Well, they were never in the EU, but dropping NATO. There's a real strong possibility that Turkey will abandon NATO and head for BRICS, and that's going to be big trouble for the West. Said the other day, Incirlik Air Force Base. If the West loses that, that's game over for that side of the world.
I wonder if they sort of associate the West with, like, the sort of Anglo-Saxon mentality. The centuries of imperialism, and they think that the U.S. has sort of taken over that mentality.
They have. Yeah.
You think there's that going on?
Oh, yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. At the end of World War II, the United States became the new world colonizer. Okay? They kind of took over for England. I mean, Western Europe and England included with that got devastated in World War II. The United States got pretty much unscathed, other than losing over 1 million troops, but the homeland was unscathed. So the politicians all got together at the end, in the late 40s and the 50s, and said, "Hey, we got a new game going." It started out with the Marshall Plan, where the United States made big loans to Europe, and then not that they really moved into Africa or anything like that too much, like European colonizers did, but at the same time, the United States came in on the back door. Okay, they sent their private corporations in there on the push from the American government, and started getting into the mining and the natural resources and doing all they could to undercut Europe and everybody else. And that's how that got started. So in effect, the United States had their own way of colonizing countries. They did it through private corporations. Okay? And the terms weren't all that great. But as far as the core tenets of colonizing, the United States, they hit all the check marks for that. They're still trying.
And then Britain was losing its colonies around the 1940s and 50s, or at least from
they started losing. They started losing a lot of them during World War I. Okay, that was their big turning point. Was World War I, and it just kind of went downhill from there. Of course, you see how they are right now. They really shot themselves in the foot. So, I think to myself, I don't care what kind of government they get in over in England. Labor, Tories, what have you, whatever they get over there, it's not going to help them. They're finished.
Well, as you mentioned, that the United States took over the whole colonialism project.
Right.
It's the face of it was revealed in Gaza, in my opinion.
Oh, yeah.
When you see nakedly that nothing is going to stop the bombs.
I want to take that back even further. The real face of that started when the United States went to Vietnam to help out their French buddies.
Okay.
In the 1950s.
I don't know the history too well.
So the history is French was all in colony in Vietnam. Okay, it was a big resource for them, but the problem is they treated the people so badly that they rose. And then the communists kind of rolled in from the north through China.
Yep.
The communist ideology got picked up by the North Vietnamese, and they ran with it. So they got the idea that, hey, you know what? We don't like this. Let's kick the French out. So they got in a big war, sort of, like a territorial war, much like, the Middle East, and went up against the French. Well, the French had no way to fight them back. They were losing badly. So the Americans, you understand, in the 50s, we were deep into McCarthyism and the communist scare. So when the French said, hey, we need a little help here, the United States was all for stepping in and helping them out. So at first, it was
this under Eisenhower or JFK?
No, this was before JFK.
Was this under Eisenhower or
yeah, it was kind of like under Eisenhower. No, and basically we just sent advisors over there. We did not send combatants. These guys were in there advising the South Vietnamese army and working with the French, and that's all these guys were doing in the 50s. All right, you had maybe a few dozen guys. So then things started getting bad. The French basically pulled out, left the Americans almost holding the bag. So then that's when everything started escalating. So JFK, and that's one of the reasons people are speculating that one of the reasons why he got shot was because he was getting ready to pull everybody out. JFK wanted all the troops out. He was going to let whatever happened over there and let them have it. We don't need to be there. Okay. Well, once LBJ took over, the gates were open.
They escalated again. Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah.
So I'm curious.
It's really sad.
With your military background. Go on. Sorry, Rich.
No, you go ahead. You go ahead.
Yeah, I was going to ask. Okay, I was going to ask you, Terrence. I mean, do you see any similarity? I mean, are there like lots of similarities between the Vietnam situation and Ukraine? Because it seems like in Vietnam, I think that the complaints started right like 19. I can think within the first 1 or 2 years with David Halberstam, and supposedly JFK was so distraught by it that he didn't want Halberstam he didn't want him reporting or discussing this, so he sent him out supposedly. So I always thought that JFK was kind of in favor of that war, but you're saying that he was towards the end of his life, he was kind of opposed to it.
Well,
and
the big thing is,
shot.
The difference is JFK was in favor of helping things out. He had no problem at all with the advisors. What he didn't want to do is get the Americans involved in an escalation with a lot of boots on the ground. Okay. And you got to understand, there was a bunch of war hawks, communists, guys all about, J. Edgar Hoover and guys like that, leftovers from the communist days. So they were all about going over there and defeating the communists. We didn't care. Just defeat the communists, get rid of them, push them back. Well, of course, you got to have a lot of boots on the ground to do that. And that's the one thing that JFK didn't want to do, was he didn't want to send a whole bunch of troops over there and get involved in a war. Okay. So he was trying really hard to kind of keep everything on a low key, pretty much how it had been. He's all about advising, no problem. You take care of your own problem. We'll help you out that way, but we're not giving you any troops. We'll give you all kinds of arms. We'll give you munitions. We'll help you out that way. We'll send some trainers over there. End of discussion. Now, that is more reminiscent of Afghanistan than as far as that goes in the early parts of the Vietnam War. But like I said, Kennedy's dead. LBJ's in charge. He's got guys like McNamara who are on the take with the military defense contractors. So they decided, hey, we can make a whole bunch of money on the side. Let's do this. So then off they went. Okay. And it was off to the races. So here's the other part of the thing. 1968, Richard Nixon was, going up against Humphrey for president.
Yeah.
Okay. Now, the problem with that was Tricky Dick Nixon went behind everybody's back to the North Vietnamese and said, hey, if you hold off, don't go to the peace conference, wait a couple of years, then let me get elected. Okay. So, that story. Basically, Tricky Dick Nixon committed treason, and he got a lot of soldiers killed for no reason, because we could have ended the war in 1968. Okay. But,
he bombed Cambodia too, didn't he?
Oh man, he carpet bombed North Vietnam. He bombed Cambodia, Laos. I mean, he went to town, and, there was no reason for that. Like I said, the war could have been over in 1968. LBJ was willing to go to the table with the Vietnamese. He could have made a deal, but, Nixon decided, nope, I need this to get elected. So there they go. And yeah, Nixon carpet bombed crap out of everything over there.
interesting thing too is that I heard that lots of Americans were actually in favor of this war, except for those, the college protesters. And that started around like what, 1967?
It's no different back then than it is right now. The news media in this country was all about doing whatever the government told them to. So
even then,
okay.
Wow.
Mainstream media was promoting the war. So you had all these people that were only knew what they knew from the news. So yeah, we're going to be pro-war because the government says we should be. All right. Well, that's when the students got involved and said, no, we know better. And they started protesting. And it got worse because the more one side of the divide pushed saying, no, we're pro-war, the other side, mostly the students, were saying, no, we're out of here. We're the ones are being sent over there to be killed, not you. Okay. You're pro-war person. You don't have to worry about getting drafted. I do. So yeah, I'm protesting this. And that's kind of how it all started. And then of course escalated from there. And then the other part of that, when Nixon was carpet bombing everything once he got elected, then the students really got upset, and things kind of went from there. But like I said, it's not much different.
Yeah.
We just kind of continued the same pattern. I mean, as far as Afghanistan is concerned, I agree with us doing what we did in the end of 2001, going in there, get rid of the training camps, and routing out the Taliban and so on, and that's fine. Okay, sending over humanitarian units like the one I was on to try to bring things up and help help set up a government, help set up the local things and do that. But the problem is we shouldn't have stayed near as long as we did. Okay, there was no reason for it. All right, go in there, spend a year or so helping them get their country rebuilt a little bit, set up something. But like I said, they couldn't leave it alone. We should have pulled out of there. We should have pulled out of there in 2003. Okay. And
are we still sanctioning Afghanistan? Do we still have their money in the bank locked up here?
Probably, only because we don't like the Taliban. Okay. Again, it's another one of those deals, and it goes back to what a lot of these guys have been saying last few weeks. Is that's the United States' idea of colonization was to spread their version of liberal democracy to every country on the earth. That's their mandate. Okay. It's like, back in the old days of Europe when the Pope from what used to be the Roman Empire tried to spread their brand of Christianity throughout Europe only because that was their thing. Well, the United States decided to take the same template and take liberal democracy, their version of it, and spread it throughout the world. Initially it was to fight back against communism, but then they decided, well, this is such a good thing, we're just going to keep throwing it at everybody. We're not going to give.
Actually, you know what? That's what the French. That's kind of what the Girondins were doing at the end of the French. Not at the end, but during the French Revolution, somewhere around 1792, not 1793, when they started declaring war on everyone. So yeah, this is probably the Western template.
Right, it is. It's one of those deals. It's basically human psychology. You know what I mean? If you do something and it works the first time, well, we're going to keep trying it again until it doesn't work. Okay, once it keeps working, we're going to keep doing it.
Well, here's the thing. Even when we decided to bomb the Houthis, I read in the media that they know it's not working. Yeah. But we're going to keep doing it anyway.
Right.
So when does common sense kick in? There's no reverse gear, and it seems there's no knowledge of data, no ability to negotiate.
Nope. Well, here's the other part of it. Military doctrine here in the United States dates back to the 1990s. The United States has not updated their military doctrine strategy in 20 years. Okay? 25 years. All right?
Wow.
That's bad. All right? That's seriously bad. And meanwhile, though, countries like Russia and China, theirs is way up to date. So how can the United States even dare challenge an army like the Chinese and the Russian armies? We don't have the ability to even challenge them, yet we keep doing it. Well, like, stop it, stupid.
It doesn't make sense.
No.
With this new drone warfare, the carriers that are coming, let's assume they're heading to Taiwan. They're going to get swarmed with drones.
Yeah.
Well,
here's the thing. Taiwan is close enough to the Chinese mainland as far as ammunition is concerned. If any of the United States aircraft carriers were to sail between Taiwan and mainland China, they would get sunk in the South China Sea.
I believe
because the Chinese have carrier destroyers. They've got missiles they can launch from the shores of China, and they can take out an aircraft carrier. They're that bad. And the United States doesn't have anything to counter them with other than nukes.
Well, there you go.
Yeah.
It's insane.
It is.
So
it's an insane world.
Why keep provoking? The world has changed. We need to evolve.
Right. Well, that's just it. The rest of the world is evolving. It's the United States that's not. That's the problem. See, and that's where everything kind of falling through the cracks.
Well, how can we evolve when we have 2 geriatrics going up for the presidency?
Well, I'll be honest with you, neither. Let's talk about that a little bit, okay? Because Ms. Francis, you wanted to talk about the debate, so let's talk about that a little bit. All right. So this, like Mitch is calling a geriatric display of embarrassment the other night. All right. So here's my theory, and this is just my theory, is that neither Joe Biden or Donald Trump have any control whatsoever over their office. Okay. They're just talking heads. All right. There's a bunch of other people pulling the strings, making all the decisions, and these guys are just figureheads. Now that's my theory, because that's what happened to Ronald Reagan, and that's within our lifetimes. And so I'm thinking that as we all saw Friday night, Joe Biden stumbled really, really, really bad. And I mean, what little bit of I saw, because I didn't watch the show, but I caught clips of it the next day. And it was very obvious that this guy had some health issues going on. Okay.
Yeah.
Whether it's dementia.
Yeah, not just mental issues, but health, physical issues.
Or a cold, what have you. Okay. But whatever his health issues were, it caused an absolute disaster. Okay. Now, I've heard so many stories, and we'll probably never know the truth for sure as far as it goes. But you look at the other side of the coin. Look at Donald Trump. Okay. He was a rabid dog. All right. I mean, do you honestly think that anybody in government is going to let this guy make any decisions, especially when he has the codes to nuclear football? No, not even the slightest. Again, Donald Trump is just another talking head. That's all. And these guys that are running the show won't let him make any real decisions. End of discussion. Okay. So that's the state of our government right now. And it was on full display the other night at the debates. Question is, what do we do about it?
What really strikes me is this. Like, I mean, for instance, we already know he was in decline, like even in 2020. Yep. So I was just so surprised that they were thinking even of running him again like last year.
Yeah. Well, remember, I mean, it was 4 years. Remember 4 years ago, Joe Biden won the election, and one of the first things he said, "I'm only going to do one term. I am just a bridge to the new guy."
Exactly.
Yeah. What happened to that?
And then the crazy thing is too, like, just watching all this spin out is just really fascinating. You probably know about the article I wrote like a few weeks ago for Medium about, who are the Dems who are afraid of, Bernie Sanders or Donald Trump. And I got so much pushback on it. The funniest thing is all these people saying that, well, if Biden does not have dementia at all. You're just picking up a right-wing talking point. There are I think about 1/3 of the people commenting said that, and then look at what happened. And they're all like, "Oh my God, I didn't know he was in such bad." It's like, but anyone who was paying attention could tell. Yeah. And I don't like Dean Phillips, but at least he was younger than Biden.
Right.
He was trying to contest it, I think, back in the early months of this year.
Yeah. And he got shut down.
The DNC pushed back and said, no, it's going to just Biden. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. And look what that got him. So,
And now,
obviously,
sorry,
we've all been watching this for the last 4 years. Remember a couple of years ago, Biden was at some kind of ceremony and at some Air Force base, I think, or something, and he fell down and they had to help him up, okay, right in front of all the cameras.
I don't remember that.
And there's been a lot of incidences throughout his 4 years. So, him coming out 4 years ago saying, I'm only going to do one term. Well, he should have kept to his word. And his excuse, I'm the only one who can beat Donald Trump. You know what? That doesn't hold water. I'm sorry.
Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. Because Clinton, I think, like when he was running for governor, he was governor for one term and then he got defeated, but then he came back again later. So yeah, you can never tell. Yeah, and with inflation the way it is, with all the wars and stuff, I mean, I just really didn't think Biden had a fighting chance. I was really surprised that he wanted to run last year.
Well, again, I think he got pushed to some degree, mostly because the Democratic National Convention couldn't find anybody that was up to the task of. And they're, like I said, they only care about one thing: beating Donald Trump. Okay, what they don't understand is Donald Trump is just a figurehead. Okay, he's just a figurehead. So you got the MAGA cult people, which is like an infection in the House of Representatives right now. And these guys are trying to run the show. And these are the guys who are propping Donald Trump up, saying, yeah, he's going to be our figurehead, but we're really going to be running the show. And of course, then you have, the executive branch, you can pretty much rule out any MAGA people in there. If they are, they're keeping at a really extremely low profile for obvious reasons. But mostly, I think there are probably not too many there, if any at all. All right. But they're waiting in the wings. I mean, these guys are foaming at the mouth, waiting in the wings. They're ready to jump at a moment's notice. I mean, it's like a 82nd Airborne waiting on a tarmac, waiting to get on the plane to go. Okay. I mean,
the big problem is some are waiting in the wings, but some are in the judiciary in the Supreme Court.
That's a whole nother animal. Okay. It's like
look at those decisions this week.
Well, I'm
stunned.
The Chevron decision.
What do we got? Yeah. We got 9 Supreme Court justices, right? So 3 of them are what they consider liberal Democrats or something in the middle. Okay. Mm-hmm. But by and large, they typically will write or vote on the law, right? For what it's worth. But now you have 2 out of those 6 who are obviously being bribed, Alito and Thomas. Okay. I mean, it's an open secret. Okay. I'm sorry. All right.
Yeah.
Now the other 4, they vote not on the law, but they vote on religious ideologies. Okay. They're Catholics. They're very, very strong Catholics. And, Amy Coney Barrett is an extreme Catholic. So she votes along those lines. So their decision-making is not judiciary. It's based on ideology and bribery.
Oh, yeah.
Well, here's a challenge with
the ideology. And by the way, even right-wing lay people agree it's biased.
Yeah. Everybody knows it. Like I said, it's no secret.
Here's one of the thoughts about the ideology. I understand. You can correct me if I'm wrong, but they may believe that using too much of your thinking takes you away from God's direction and guidance. So they don't encourage you to think too much. They don't want you to believe you have the expertise. You go with guidance. You go with divine guidance.
Here's what I will tell you. That kind of template, if you will, goes all the way back to the Roman Empire, when the Roman Empire morphed itself into the Holy Roman Catholic Church, back about the 400 years after Christ. When the Roman Empire dissolved, about mid 400s or so, they morphed into the Roman Catholic Church. Okay, now it took them a little bit to get up and going, but it didn't take long. Okay, 100, maybe less than 100 years, and now you have a Roman Pope. Okay, how is that not like a Roman emperor, only with a different set of clothes on? And they started doing the same thing. But the idea is that they promoted this ideology. It was basically a morphed version of the Roman Empire's mentality. is that we're the best in the world. We're going to take over, and so on and so forth. And, so here's, you fast forward to the 21st century. You have all of these factions of the Christian religion across the world. How many branches of the Protestant religion do we have just here in the United States? Can you even count? Can you even count them? I know I can't. Okay. And they don't agree with one another. Okay. And you go to one evangelical church in the South, and it's their way or the highway. And then you go to a Methodist church up north, and they're saying, no, we don't agree with them people. We're going to do it our way. So now you have all of these people gathered together saying we should have a white Christian nationalist type of government, but we can't agree on how that's going to look. And that's the big problem on that side of the divide, is that they kind of know what they want, but they can't agree on how it's going to look. So they're all in disarray. And it's very obvious if you look at our House of Representatives right now, it is as much chaos as they got going on. Well, that's a direct reflection on the population of the United States. All that same chaos we see in public there on the House floor is also going on in all these states. Okay. And so you have to ask yourself, if they were going to go that direction, who's going to take charge? What's it going to look like? The Catholics obviously would like to have a nation state based on their ideology. Mm-hmm. And then you have the Protestants who would like to have some kind of version of what they want, and they don't necessarily like the Catholics. So,
yes.
I don't know how that. Honestly, I have no idea how that would turn out. I'm not a Christian myself, so I'm good to stand by and watch. But I'm also a little apprehensive, because if they should get their way with this Project 2025, people like me, we may not have a home anymore.
Well, if you look at the way they're knocking the expertise of some of our government agencies, they're taking that off the table. We don't want that to have any relevance into the laws that we make. Or we're going to make laws, but we're not going to rely on these people anymore.
Right.
I don't know if I'm saying it properly, but
no, you're right.
They're de-incentivizing expertise.
Yeah.
And they're kicking it back to the courts for people who are not elected and don't have the expertise and are going to be bogged down for decades in legislation.
Well, think about this.
We're going to be in trouble.
Right.
Really trouble.
Yeah, there's no doubt. So here's the big deal. The private corporations pushed for this to get rid of this Chevron defense. Mm-hmm. Okay. They finally got the Supreme Court to basically kick the can outside. We don't want to deal with it. Whatever happens, happens. So, of course, corporations are all over this because they know it's just like you said, Mitch. It's one of those deals. If they gut the federal regulators who basically have the knowledge, have the expertise to know right from wrong, and they kick it into a courthouse where these judges are already overbooked. They got more court cases they can handle, and now they're going to get a ton more. Mm-hmm. It's not going to get handled. Mm-hmm. So all this stuff. Mm-hmm. No. Meanwhile, for example, you got, Cancer Alley down there in Louisiana and East Texas. And so you got all these lawsuits going on for air pollution and water pollution and all that kind of stuff. Well, those cases are never going to get adjudicated for like years and years and years because one of the backlog. Okay. And secondly, the regulators basically can't take these people to task anymore. It's up to the people doing the lawsuits versus taking it to court and arguing it, and it's going to take years and years and years. Meanwhile, the private corporations said, oh, yeah, hey, great, this is good for us. We can just keep doing what we're doing for as long as possible because this stuff may never get in front of a judge for decades.
It may be cheaper to pay the fine than to fix
there's some of them that are doing that.
Yeah.
The problem is by gutting the FDA, the EPA, and all these other peeps, they're not even going to get fined anymore. Because there's nobody to go out there do inspections. They took all their funding away. They took all their authority away, which is what the private corporations wanted. So now you're going to have issues with meat packing plants who are hiring child laborers, not paying them hardly anything, not giving them any kind of safety or nothing. Kids are going to be getting killed a lot more. They're going to be 14-year-old kids getting killed on the night shift. And they were getting fined. These companies were getting fined. But if they take away the inspectors or take away the authority of these meatpacking inspectors, then guess what?
Right. Or another way to look at it would be, let's say you have to buy something and you want it to be safe. So you look at a plastic product and it says BPA free.
Yeah.
It's fine, but they could have put BPB or BPC, something equally toxic or worse. And there's no way to, unless you have a law specifically stating BPA, PCD. Some of those things may not have been invented yet.
That's right.
And there's no way to regulate that. So unless you have ambiguity in the law, anything can happen.
That's right. So, you know what I mean? If you can grow your own vegetables, I would strongly start doing it. If you can grow, like in your case, Ms. Francis, you live in the city, you can grow a rooftop garden, you might want to think about it. Okay. Because, I say that it sounds funny, but it's becoming the truth. Okay. Like Mitch said, you can't trust what you get at the grocery store anymore. All right. And my wife and I
look at all these recalls, like almost every week there's something.
Oh, yeah. Absolutely.
They didn't used to be so frequent in the past. I know that.
Well, the thing about it is, you think about all those recalls we're seeing now. What's going to happen when all these regulators are no longer on the streets? Well, there won't be any recalls.
Oh, yeah.
You're just going to have a lot more. You're going to have a lot more people dying. And that's the sad truth of all of this. There's going to be a lot more people dying. So, it goes back to, taking care of yourself. You know what I mean? As best you can. My wife and I might spend $50 at the grocery store a week. I buy minimal stuff. The rest of it we get, we get from local sources. We grow a lot of our own vegetables now, and stuff like that. But we go to farmers markets and get them straight from the farmers. That way we don't have to worry about it too much. Various other things. My wife, being Chinese, she goes to the local Asian markets where there's a lot fresher stuff that comes in. Granted, the inspectors are probably less inclined to go to the local Asian food store and checking them out too much. But you know what? I trust them more than I do the Americans.
So what do you think we should do with the Supreme Court? I mean, like there are people suggesting that we should add more, and then there were some like Bernie Sanders who said, we should be rotating them. So what would you say?
No. I think they should be on term limits.
Yeah.
That would solve a lot of it. Put them on term limits, okay? And you could do it one of two ways. Yeah. So let's say you have a Republican-controlled government, and like when Donald Trump was president, and he got three justices confirmed while he was president, and they maneuvered the heck out of everything, got these people on the bench. But you know what? Once the Republican government ends, so do they. Okay, they were not elected, so they become like the cabinet. Okay, when the cabinet leaves and a new government takes over, so do they.
I could work with that.
Yeah.
That could work.
The only other option would be to do like they do in the district and in some of the state courts where these guys are elected. Then you could do it that way too. Okay, but I mean, I go either way. But either way, lifetime appointments got to go.
Yeah,
that's the number one thing right there. This whole business of having lifetime appointments, which gives them a big head saying we can do whatever we want, has got to go.
Yeah.
Now, whether we ever have a government that'll actually do something like that, that's another animal.
I can't see how we will change the Constitution, given that we need so much.
Oh no, you gotta understand. It's this whole business with the Supreme Court. The only thing in the Constitution it says that the Congress will take and control the Supreme Court. Okay.
Interesting.
The Supreme Court falls under the jurisdiction of the Congress.
So are you saying that there's no law that specifies the Supreme Court is for life? Is there a law anywhere?
That's right.
There's no law?
No.
Well then that what you're saying will work?
If you can get Congress to vote on it. See? That's the ticket right there. All right? Like I said, the Supreme Court justices have had lifetime appointments since the first court got convened back in the early part of the 19th century. And it's just been that way ever since, right? And it's caused lots of problems ever since. It's been a thing since in all of American history. All right. Well, you know what? The big thing, and this is what a lot of people don't realize, is that the Supreme Court falls under the jurisdiction of the Congress. They're the ones who make the rules for the Supreme Court. Their ethics, how they do business. So yes, Congress could very easily change the rules on lifetime appointments and say, "Hey, too much. You guys are not behaving. We're gonna spank you and take away your big privilege." And like I said, I would go either one. You want to elect them in like like cabinet members when the president goes, so do they, or they can do like congressional members and have term limits. So at the end of their term, they're gone.
Yeah, I like the idea of the term limits. I like that.
Yeah.
But we probably need to have a constitutional convention for all this. And
no. As far as
we would need a constitutional convention.
You don't need a constitutional convention. All you need is a Congress to all agree on it. That's all you need is the House of Representatives to make a majority vote to pass something like that, and it would be a done deal. That's all it would take.
Interesting.
Yeah. Problem is nobody's got the will to do it. See, the Supreme Court.
It's like getting rid of the Electoral College.
Well, that's another animal altogether. The idea of the original Electoral College was to prevent ballot stuffing and all that kind of stuff. Okay, that was back in the early 19th century. Again, there was an issue with lack of regulation on rural areas, things like that. So they decided to do the Electoral College to kind of police up the ballot system, because there was rampant ballot box stuffing and all kinds of crazy stuff going on back then. Well, I think,
and there was the idea that also the people were not educated enough to know better. The delegates would know better. That was one of the premises.
Exactly. See, so here's the thing. To my knowledge, the way things are right now, with certain states kind of doing a couple of states that have starting to do things a little bit different. I'm of the opinion the Electoral College has outlived its usefulness. Mm-hmm. We have enough technology right now. We have enough voting security right now in place to where you could do a one vote per person and count them and let it go and do away with the Electoral College. And then you could have standing votes for whoever you're in the election for, whether it's local congressman or it's local, what have you. Electoral College basically is an outdated something that just either needs to be completely revamped or done away with. I'm all for making it go away.
Yeah.
It's just outlived its usefulness.
And it's funny. Yeah. I mean, you would think that the Dems would have gotten rid of it after that whole, Bush-Gore debacle in 2000, but no, they don't want to touch it.
No, they don't want to touch it. Well, the problem is the Republicans pushed really hard. And, when has our House of Representatives, or even the Senate for that matter, had a supermajority? How many decades has it been? I mean, I don't think it's been that way in my lifetime. And I've been around a long time. Mm-hmm. So, that's the biggest problem right there, is that you basically, to make changes like that, do away with the Electoral College, term limits on Supreme Court justices and all that kind of stuff, you would have to have a Democratic Party and a supermajority in the House of Representatives and the Senate and a Democratic president. That's the only way stuff like that would get done. And like I said, we haven't had that since anybody can remember. So, I don't know. The thing about it is Clinton, yeah, he kind of did, as far as it goes. But, Clinton was so busy with his own affairs, and I say that word loosely, that he didn't have time to pay attention. So, everybody, it's not a real big secret that Hillary Clinton was president and Bill Clinton was just the talking head. Okay. I mean, everybody knows that she was the president telling him what to do. And he just said, yes, ma'am, and did whatever. Okay. It's a pretty much, everybody kind of know it. We knew it back then because that was the same way in Arkansas. Hillary Clinton came from a hugely prominent, very rich, wealthy family, and Billy Clinton came from the rural whatevers. Okay, and what was it, Hope Springs or whatever it is, Central Arkansas. Okay, so he was a hillbilly from the Ozarks, married up, and he got to be Attorney General and then Governor of Arkansas, and he couldn't keep his stuff in his pants long enough to get anything done. So Hillary was running the show. And the same thing happened when they went to Washington. Okay? They got told when they left Arkansas to go to the White House, don't come back, because there was so much scandal. The Whitewater scandal and all that stuff, which is one of the biggest reasons why, she got to be a senator from New York and all that stuff, because they got told, you're not welcome in Arkansas anymore. Okay? Don't come back. And then that was that. But like I said, Bill Clinton went to the White House, and like in Arkansas, he was just a mouthpiece. He's really good at giving really good speeches. That's the only thing he was good for. Okay? Yeah. But as far as having a brain on top of his shoulders, no, that was Hillary.
And then she couldn't get elected.
You think they will put Hillary instead of
See, Hillary shot herself.
They might sub her in.
Hillary killed herself. And to be honest with you, her personality was what undid her. Okay? If she could have, and to be honest with you, given her personality, I seriously doubt that she had the ability to make that kind of a change. But if she could have been more personable, she probably could have beat Donald Trump without too much trouble. But she shot herself in the foot 2 or 3 times, and because of her arrogance, and it cost her the election.
The basket of deplorables.
With her.
Well, that was just one of the things she did.
She didn't have a vision, though. That's another thing. She didn't have a vision either. Unlike, say, Bernie or even Trump, she didn't have a vision at all.
Now, well, you got to understand.
Have you read this book by Amy Parnes and Jonathan Allen, Shattered? Because they talk all about it. She didn't even have any ideas going in.
No.
I mean, she could not come up with a plan.
And that was the other part that killed her, was the fact that she was just going to carry on from the previous administration. Whatever was going on before her, she was going to continue doing it. No change. And everybody said, no, we're not going to go for that. Now, granted, she did have a lot of people that were willing to go along with that. But the independents, on the other hand, they weren't going to go for that too much. And then, like I said, the tipping point was her arrogance towards the rural people in the United States. That undid her. Okay, that undid her, and that's all it took for the Republican Party to maneuver things and get Comey on board, and that was it. Her arrogance about using a private server for her emails, and once somebody found that out, that was it. Game over.
And she didn't even bother to campaign in some of those important states. I mean, she just thought, I'm going to coast through. It was the same mistake she made in 2008 was Obama.
Yes.
Like she thought, I'm going to be so big, who cares about the little states? I'm just going to go to the big states and win. And then by then, Obama had gained so much traction.
That was part of her arrogance. She thought they were beneath her. She didn't need to worry about them. It's like, okay, you're stupid. Go home. And that was the end of that.
She's still blaming Bernie. She's still blaming Bernie.
Absolutely. Still blaming Bernie. I'm sorry. You're the ones, it's you and your people who, shut Bernie down, basically told him to sit down and shut up. And that's how it goes. The Republicans did the same thing to Al Gore back in 2000. They basically told him, we don't care. George W. Bush is going to be president come hell or high water. That's the end of it. We don't want you simply because we don't like your, hippie ideas, climate change and all these other things. No, you're not going to do that. You're going to dig into too much of the private corporations' profits if you get to do all your ideas. We can't have that. So, like I said, they all ganged up on him and did all they could, and it worked. They almost didn't get it. The only thing that saved the Republicans, George W., the only thing that saved George W. was his brother being the governor of Florida.
And the Supreme Court.
Well, yeah, that too. But here's the thing. the Supreme Court was just sitting kind of waiting, okay? And they saw they could make their move once the votes were so close, okay? They knew that it could be a done deal. Now, if the vote count had been a lot wider, the Supreme Court would have let it go and said, okay, Gore's the winner. But because Jeb Bush, squashed, purged a lot of voters, it made it so close that, and then they just basically got the Supreme Court to say, no, don't, you can't do a recount in the discussion, So the
I
Supreme
was
Court
at that time.
Yeah. Yeah. And the thing is,
I was in England at that time. People were surprised that they weren't going to finish the counting. I mean, people were genuinely surprised, even the conservatives.
The thing is, the Supreme Court was trying really, really hard to not get involved with that too much because they knew how it would look. So they waited and waited and waited. And then when the opportunity came, they were able to do something. And yes, it was controversial, but not near as bad as if the vote count had been wider enough to make a real difference in favor of Al Gore. The Supreme Court probably would have not done anything simply because of the optics. But having such a close vote, well, the optics weren't so bad for them. They could have go ahead and do it. It's kind of a catch-22. Sit back and wait, see how it goes, and take it from there. But yeah, I mean, it's the elections in this country since Richard Nixon have been rigged in every which way but form, in fashion or another. Okay, Richard Nixon is his deal. Look what happened to Jimmy Carter. Ronald Reagan basically pulled a rug off from underneath him with the Iran deal, and they got it. The Republicans got elected again. And George W. He went 2 elections, and both of them were rigged, and in Republicans' favor. So they're notorious for it, and everybody's thinking, well, they're going to do the same thing again here this fall. Everybody's waiting for it.
And the same thing was John Kerry didn't even contest it. That election in 2004. I think there were still a lot of states that hadn't been counted yet. He goes, he wasn't going to fight back or anything. So I don't know. I mean, I think the Dems do tend to be weak.
I agree. Yeah, they tend to give up a little bit too easy. Unfortunately, like I said, we don't have a really good system here in this country anymore. We don't. This whole thing in the Constitution that talks about of the people, for the people, by the people. Yeah, well, it's a government
for the 1%.
For the 1%. Yeah. That's basically what it's come down to. And it's unfortunate. So
here we are.
Yeah, here we are. So what do you guys think about Julian Assange?
He told the truth.
He did.
He was a journalist, and he could not be allowed to tell the truth. And he paid the price.
Yeah, he did.
Yeah.
Well, like Eric Snowden, and a couple others in the past. Yeah, they paid the price for telling the truth. Some of them a dire one. There's some of these guys who just were made to disappear, or they went to jail for long periods, so on and so forth. But yeah, so the big thing is, like everybody's talking about, and granted, it was a tragedy what happened. I'm glad he's free, but what right now everybody's really, media organizations across the world right now are afraid of the United States because they're scared that the United States is going to come after them.
Well, here's the thing: people are moving. People don't trust the United States economically. Militarily, sanctions, they're coming down on free speech within the country. As far as I can see, you can't say anything about Israel if you had a negative opinion. Losing trust in the United States is being perceived externally, and it's going to affect us in a significant way going forward. How can we keep up the economy? Trust. The young people don't even want to fight for the country. They don't even want to work.
No.
So this is a critical flaw in how we operate in the country, in my opinion. What do you guys think?
Well, the thing is, I think it's so disunited because it's like a feudal system. You think, but it's, we no longer have the aristocrats as in England, but we have the corporations, which are like sort of the feudal baronies. And this is what our government relies on for their political donations and everything. So that's why we have a huge problem.
Yeah, no, and you're right. And that's just it. The Supreme Court let go a couple of laws back 20 some odd years ago and allowed legal bribery by corporations. There was a couple of famous ones back then, Citizens United being one of them.
That's the biggest one.
That's the biggest one. Okay. And since then, it's been a real big problem. And until we do something about that, it's going to continue to be a problem, and it's going to kill the United States. It all comes down to, you're right. Everywhere across the world right now, people are losing their trust in the United States. The other part of it is that they probably, the trust issues have always been there, but it was always the quiet part, not said. But now they're saying it out loud because BRICS has offered them an alternative. Now they're not afraid of the United States as much. Okay. And so because that fear is dissipating, we can now come out and say, yeah, we don't like the United States. And they got Russia and China backing them up, saying, we'll back you. And so you go ahead and say whatever you want. And so they're saying it. A lot of countries are, doing away with the dollar. This whole business of American dollars being the reserve currency is disappearing fast around the world. Treasury bonds are being sold by the millions and billions.
So China dump a bunch of them again. Yeah.
Not just China. Japan dumped a bunch.
Japan's dumping a bunch.
Right. Other countries are dumping them. There's a couple of countries down in South America that are dumping them. So it's becoming a thing. And as soon, I bet you wait and see, because the Saudi Arabians basically did away with their agreement with the United States on the petrodollar. That was just not that long ago. So they had a contract. Well, they decided not to renew the lease. Okay. So now Saudi Arabia is saying, we'll still sell oil in dollars if you want to buy in dollars. But at the same time, if Russia wants to use rubles and if India wants to use rupees, we're okay with that too. So Saudi Arabia is basically saying, you want to buy our oil? We don't care what kind of currency you want to use. We'll figure it out. All right.
See, there's a little nuance in there as well. When the US dollar was the only currency that Saudi Arabia could have used, they would have taken it and used it to buy treasuries.
Right.
To recycle the money. But now they're not doing that anymore, or not as much.
Great point.
So that's a big one. We're going to be having trouble with the US dollar.
That's right. See, and that's it. So, I've been saying all along for like several weeks now, several weeks, that all the indicators, all the prognosticators, everybody's saying that the United States is headed for a major recession. Okay. And they're still saying that. I said this last week when Mitch and I were talking. I mentioned it the week before. I've been watching a lot of these economic forecasters. These guys, these are independents. One guy I listened to is actually a stockbroker. And, it's one of those, he's going to try and sell you stocks. So if you don't listen to that part of his show, but you listen to the other stuff, he's saying the same thing that the other ones are saying, is that the banks are getting ready. Like I was telling Mitch, the regional and local banks across the country are getting ready to basically disappear. They're going insolvent. And when a lot of these commercial real estate leases come up at the end of this summer for renewal, with mortgage renewals, the banks aren't going to do it, and they're going to get stuck. Or what's going to happen, most of them, there's two things that are happening right now. One, these people are coming up at the end of their contracts with the banks. They're going to default. Okay. They're going to say, we're done here. Take it back. We'll take the loss. Move on. A lot of companies are going bankrupt. Secondly, you got a lot of
there's been a lot in these last 2 years. I mean, last 4 years.
That's right. That's right. And then, with commercial real estate taking, the banks are going to fold because they can't hold on to this stuff. They don't have enough money to cover all this stuff, and they're scared to death right now. Bank runs. And be honest with you, I would be scared of that too, because word gets out that these banks are insolvent. There's a lot of people who are going to be standing in line at the door saying, I want my money.
Mm-hmm.
See?
Mm-hmm.
The problem with that is the bank doesn't have the money. They spent it on real estate. And you can't eat with real estate. And that's what these people are going to be worried about. So they're scared to death of bank runs. So the Fed right now is doing everything they can to lie, telling everybody across the country, oh, everything's great. Everything's great. We're not going to do anything with the interest rates. The inflation's great, so on and so forth. Jobless rates are down. Well, guess what? They're lying. Okay? The real truth is the jobless rate is inching higher. And that doesn't even count to people that are no longer being counted. There's a lot of that.
Yeah, exactly.
Okay. Then secondly, they're not talking about all this bank problems. They're keeping that under wraps. They're telling everybody, shh, don't tell anybody. We know you're in trouble. Shh, don't tell anybody. Okay. We don't want to know.
They've been talking about this. Mm-hmm. They've been actually talking about this commercial real estate crash, I think, since around actually 2010 or so. I remember that was like the earliest rumblings.
Yep. Well, the big thing is it was just a rumble back then, but then after 2020, it became more than a rumble because a lot of these people, they sent their people home for COVID, but then they didn't want to come back. And one, they found out, as far as a company was concerned, it was cheaper for them to have their people work from home. They were more productive and were not paying for office space. So they weren't renewing leases and rents. And now you got all this empty real estate all over the place. It's like 3 weeks ago, there was a thing in the news that 44-story building in downtown St. Louis would originally sold for $205 million, got sold for $3.9 million. And that's the other thing that's happening is that's going to happen a lot, that they're going to sell these commercial real estate, prime real estate for such huge losses. Of course, the company that was the seller, they're still on the hook for that money. So they're going to sell the building for whatever they can get out of it, and they'll default on the rest.
I noticed a lot of that just because I live in the Hartford area of Connecticut. There have been so many, even nice areas like West Hartford, you see all these empty lots. And it's supposed to be, a upscale town and everything. And of course, Hartford is probably even worse off. But there are so many of these empty storefronts and everything.
Right. That's right.
And this has been for the last, I think, 10 years or so. I mean, it's just really been creeping up.
It is. Well, the biggest for me is I don't look at retail that much. I don't look at retail, malls, things like that. Because that, like you said, that stuff's been changing for years. With the advent of Amazon and Alibaba and all these online retailers, that started to happen a couple decades ago. But the big thing, the big tell is when you're driving around your town, Hartford be one of them. And I notice it here where I live in Richmond, Virginia. And if you go anywhere around there, you'll see commercial buildings. So I'll give you an example.
Yeah, exactly.
Richmond, north of Richmond has a lot of commercial real estate up there because there's a lot of bank headquarters here. And all this office space that they used to have for all their customer service agents, tech support and all that, well, that's all empty now. You go by all of these office buildings everywhere around here. And it's just not here, but it's everywhere across the country. But across the country right now, all of this commercial office buildings, they're all got for lease signs out in front of them. And they're all empty.
Yep.
And once the mortgages come up for renewal, these people are going to pull the rug out and go, saying, "Hey, it's better it's better to just give the keys back to the bank than to keep paying on something that they're not going to be using."
Yeah,
and take the loss.
Right, take the loss. Yeah.
The big thing is it's going to be a two-way street. The really, really rich mega corporations, they can absorb that. Okay. Yes, they'll take a hit.
Yeah.
But they can absorb it and move on. But the little guys,
but it's the mid to small that can really get the hit. Yeah.
And those are the guys, the mid to small people are the ones who are financing through the regional and local branches, and it's going to be the domino effect.
And then the government may want to bail some of these banks out.
Well, they don't have the
money. To do that, they make prints. That's what I'm trying to say. So they may come up with their own schemes
The more
again.
they print, the more worthless it becomes.
And then what do we do, right? Because a lot of people are looking at their retirements and seeing that they may not be able to live on the pensions or Social Security that they're going to get.
Well,
Because inflation
I've seen it in myself. Yeah.
Well, sure. The big thing is you're going to notice, and if you look at this at a ground level, this is where we live, just the three of us. We live at what I call ground level, okay? So what we're going to notice is as this stuff starts rolling through, the prices of our daily stuff, we go to the grocery store, buy our weekly groceries. We go to Walmart, we go to Target, what have you. The prices of everything are going to skyrocket, okay? For two reasons.
they're already doing that, yeah.
They're already doing that.
Yeah.
They're going to get really out of hand. All right, because the logistics won't be there. That's part of it. All right. So everything is tied together. You have trucking companies that owe the banks for all their trucking fleets. If the bank if the bank goes up, their company goes up. All right. Once the banks go insolvent, you have all of these companies that are all networked together. It's supply and demand. So the people that are moving the goods, the stores that are selling them, retail, all of this, they all have loans at some kind of bank. They all do. Okay. That's just how business is done here in the United States. Everybody owes somebody somewhere. Okay.
Yep.
Well, when the banks go up, that's the anchor points for all this. When the banks go insolvent, all of that goes away. Then what? You got no way to
do you think do you think this is because we never really quite resolved that financial crash of 2008?
Yes.
Because Obama never went all the way.
No, this is true. See, what Obama should have done is pulled an FDR, okay? But he didn't.
Yep. He didn't want to become a socialist.
Right. Because he didn't, we are pretty much, like you said, it's kind of evolved. It's just been, I call it kicking the can down the street. We've been kicking the can down the street since 2008, and now the bill's coming due. And unfortunately, those of us who live at the ground level, we're going to want to end up paying that bill. Okay, and it won't be good at all. Okay.
And then if we extend the Chevron ruling, the corporations are going to see that people aren't spending as much money, so they're going to start cutting
they're already
corners.
seeing it. Yeah.
So they're going to start cutting corners.
Well, they already are.
And what are we going to get in terms of quality of food, quality of water, quality of air? They're going to destroy everything to get the dollar at the end of it.
Right.
The corporations are also already making record profits. I mean, they've all been saying that.
Yeah. Well, so here's the thing. You put that all together. So, like I said, first thing is we are going to notice higher prices of everything. It's going to. So I don't know if you guys are old enough to remember the oil embargo of the 1970s. Okay.
I read about it.
Okay. Well, I was old enough. I just come back from my overseas deployment back in the 70s, and there were gas lines on even days when you could buy gas, and it was rationed, and there were lines down the streets, sometimes 2 blocks long, everybody trying to get in line to get their ration of gas. Now, that's just one thing, but the prices of everything across the country were through the roof. People lost their jobs like crazy. It was a mess. Right. So that's one of the biggest recessions that we had in known memory. Then there were a couple other ones, 2008, you guys remember. And then that was pretty hard hitting. The biggest thing I remember about that was, the price of groceries going through the roof. And I was single at the time, and I owned my own company. So I had a service truck, and it was like most 3/4 ton service trucks, it ate a lot of gas. But what I noticed was that it was like the summer of 2010. Of course, you understand, I lived and worked in a very, very rural area. So whatever happened in mainstream America, it took a while to drift that far out in the rural area. Yeah. But when it finally hit, I was running close to $6 a gallon of gas, and it cost me so much to fill that truck up that I couldn't fill it. Okay. Once a week, I would put gas in the truck, and I'd run the limit of the pump, but that's all I could do. Okay. I couldn't afford any more. So I would just go until I started running out of gas again. And hopefully I had enough service calls to pay for the gas. But it got to the point all summer long where every bit of profit I made that summer went into the gas tank.
Wow.
You know, so it's like it was a no-win situation. And, you know, you have to think that's just one single example, personal example of what it was like for a small business owner trying to maintain things. Now you multiply that by the thousands and thousands across the country, you know? So, you know, here's the thing. I don't expect we're going to have another crisis like the oil embargo. You know what I mean? I don't think it'll ever get that bad. But I could see a 2008 type of scenario coming again, and probably worse, because the government's not going to bail these banks out. Okay? They only, back in 2008, 2009, they only bailed out the really, really big ones. They didn't bail out the little guys. They just let them fail. They depended on the banks, the big banks, to maintain. They gave them some money to get them back on their feet. Goldman Sachs, JP Morgan Chase, a couple other ones. And then they let them take care of all their little banks down the road. Well, that's not going to happen again. Okay? Everybody's already saying, no, if these banks fail, they're going to fail. They're not going to pick them up. They're done.
Wow.
They've been saying this now for several months.
So I think I'll listen to you.
So the sort of question is, first of all, those of us who live at the ground level, we need to take care of ourselves because the government's not going to take care of us. Okay? Bottom line, you know, take care of ourselves, look out for each other, look out for your family members, look out for your friends that you're close friends with, so on and so forth. You know, people you could trust to have a conversation with them without them trying to punch you in the face. Okay. Yeah. You know, that kind of relationship. And, you know, figure it out from there. But bottom line, we as individuals have to take care of ourselves because, again, the government's lying to us about pretty much everything, trying to keep their own thing going. Here's the other part of the equation. Janet Yellen, she's got her nose stuck up the Democrats' butt so far she can't see daylight. Okay, so that's one of the reasons why they're keeping the rates. They're not lowering the interest rates, and they're gaslighting the American people, telling them, "Oh yeah, it's rosy here in the country," because Joe Biden needs that to get reelected. Every presidential candidate, especially incumbents, who have ever tried to get reelected with the recession going on, has lost the election. Every one. And Joe Biden knows this. So he's going to do everything he possibly can to keep the American public pacified until he can so-called win the election. Of course, again, given things the way they are right now, I think that ship has sailed.
Yeah.
I don't think it matters anymore. Janet Yellen, the Janet Yellen, though, right. Janet Yellen's going to keep up the facade, though, that everything's rosy and the country's doing good when it's not. Just because.
Well, I remember.
I don't see the Democrats winning.
In 1971, Nixon had actually threatened any CEO caught raising prices was prosecution. And I thought, and actually, economists have actually been saying that we should do that. And it's so weird because the Biden administration didn't even want to admit that there was inflation until a few months ago, actually, believe it or not.
Right. Yeah. Well,
and Nancy Pelosi
it goes back to this whole thing. Joe Biden is doing every trick in the book to get himself reelected. Okay. This whole business of Joe Biden being the benevolent and
helping the donors,
it's a lie. Joe Biden doesn't have a benevolent bone in his body.
Well, I believe that now, given what we see. I'm calling him Genocide Joe.
Yeah.
Yep.
Right. There's nothing good about that guy.
The same guy who was always on the side of the banks and, with MBNA, and he was one who stripped the bankruptcy protection from student loans in 2005. So, he's,
correct.
He's always been on the corporate side.
That's right. Yeah. That's right. He's been that way since he got elected to office in the 70s. And nothing's changed. He just got to where
he wanted to cut Social
he
Security.
heard it a little bit better now. He's had a lot of experience.
So can we call the election and say the Democrats aren't going to win?
Well, we could if you get enough people to get on that side. But the problem is,
I'm calling it. I don't think they can win.
No, and you're right.
Yeah.
Here's the big thing.
Definitely not after Thursday.
You
Although
can't
you've
get
got a
enough
lot
Americans.
Yeah.
You can't get enough Americans to agree on anything right now. So who knows? You know, there's no way of telling which way it would go. The
thing is, you've got the blue maggots and red maggots. I mean, like now there are people, now there's some Dems saying, oh, well, it doesn't matter at all. I mean, it was just one bad night.
Right.
It's like, no.
No, that's bad. He's senile. He's demented. He needs to go home and drink some tea.
Bingo. You know what? He needs to go home, play with his dogs back up in Delaware.
Yep.
Okay?
Yep.
And be done with it. The problem is,
and his wife has been pushing him too. Have you noticed that?
Yes.
His wife is pushing him?
Well, there was a thing in the news that as of today,
his wife
he's going home and they're having a family talk today to decide whether Joe is going to continue to run. That was in the news this morning, that Joe and company are going home this weekend. They're going to have a family discussion.
I saw someone said that it was a deliberate assassination of his political career, and they put it up before the next meeting in such a way that everyone can see that he's not competent, and then they could put someone else in before the election.
Well, that's just it. If they do try to replace him right now, it's going to confuse the heck out of the voters. Most of them are going to look at this like, what in the world is going on? Now we're going to vote for the other guy, and that'll be it's game over.
Or we won't vote at all.
Or the majority of them. There's going to be a lot more of that this year. A lot of people are just going to stay home. But there's still going to be a bunch of diehards, especially the MAGA cult people. They're going to vote no matter what, because their guy, King Donald, is up in front, and they don't care. To them, Donald Trump is
another maggots will be going for Biden, and the blue maggots will be going for Biden.
Well, there's that too. I mean, I think the blue side, they will stand behind whatever the DNC puts up. They don't really care. For them, it's all about, having beaten Donald Trump. They don't really care who does it, beat Donald Trump. But I think it's too late in the game for the independents and, obviously the guys on the other side of the divide. But again, it goes back to, the Republican base. They're going to front Trump no matter what. Then that's the end of that. They don't care. They don't care what he does. He's their guy. Like I said, he's
cult.
He's a Republican version of Joel Osteen and all those other old time evangelicals. Okay, and that's all they got in their head. And unfortunately, we all know what's going to happen if he ends up taking over in January. So
let's, if you don't mind, let's play that out a little bit. He gets elected in January. Then what? What happens next?
Well, all his people are going to come in behind, and they've already said this, that they're going to implement this Project 2025.
All right. So I see it coming. I don't see the American people being able to stand up against it.
That's right. See, it goes back to this whole business of the American Congress does not do the will of the people anymore, except for a certain few.
And then you look at Joe Biden's site, and he doesn't even have anything but what he wants to do in the future.
No.
For campaigning. There's zilch. There's nothing.
All Joe Biden is going to do,
so if you have a man with a plan and a man without a plan.
Years, he's going to push his green initiatives. He's going to fight back against Congress like he's been doing and keep doing pretty much what he's been doing. It's another 4 years of the same thing he's been doing the last 4 years.
Yeah, but can we have 4 more years of a genocide? Can we have 4 more years of propping up Ukraine?
Well, that's just it. You're going to get it. Okay? It's going to be a continuation. Not much is going to change.
That's not much is going to change. Yeah, that's the problem.
Exactly.
That's the biggest problem.
That's what a lot of people are saying. We don't like that. We need change.
And then to prop up those things, you have to print the money and then dump it into the economy.
Right.
Inflation is going to go back up.
The difference between Trump and Biden, basically, is if you watch everything coming after January. With Biden in the head office, you're going to see the American economy take a slow dive to the basement. Okay? If Trump gets elected, it's going to go off the cliff immediately. they're predicting that the economy is going to go off the cliff within the first 6 months of 2025.
What does that look like?
It looks like major recession. Everything's going to bottom out. And it's going to be an absolute disaster. The other part of the equation is that what's going to gut the economy that quickly is his plan within the first year is to round up every illegal alien in the country, period. No matter how long they've been here, where they are, and he's going to deport them all. So the only way you can do that, because there's millions of them, the only way you can do that is to put them in concentration camps down on the border, and they already have them. Okay, they'll just expand the detention centers, and they'll make them larger. They're already concentration camps. The Border Patrol places these detention centers are basically an upgraded version of Dachau and Auschwitz. They already are. Okay, but they're going to expand these to accommodate these millions of people they're going to be rounding up. So here's the thing. All these people have been in this country. They've been working, paying taxes. They have jobs. Now they're going to take all these people out of the workforce. Guess what? Your economy is going to crash.
Hold up. Maybe, and I'm asking.
And then more tax cuts to the rich.
Maybe they stick them in prison and then use them as slave labor.
I don't think the United States wants that kind of public relations campaign. Truthfully, they have enough trouble as it is. Their bad PR from the border has already made the rounds around the world. They don't want to make it worse. So, yes, they won't call them concentration camps, obviously. That's right. My term, all right? But I have seen the videos of these places, and like I said, they are just upgraded concentration camps. Barbed wire,
Sunny Acres or something.
Armed guards, fences, cubicles. They're sleeping on floors on nothing, and they're barely getting fed, no medical care, so on and so forth. As I said, they're concentration camps in all but name. Okay? Now, you think about that. Now you're going to shove a couple million people down there, and you're going to have to expand these. Who's going to take care of them? Well, they're going to hire private companies to manage these things, like they have the private prison system. Okay? Makes sense. They won't put these people to work. Okay? They won't let that happen. But they will just keep them down there with minimal food, minimal health care, so on and so forth, armed guards, dogs, the whole 9 yards, searchlights, barbed wire, all that kind of stuff, and then slowly deport these people, and just, put them on planes or trucks or buses or what have you and shove them across the border. But the problem with that is the other countries don't want them. So where are they going to put them? Nobody wants them. You're going to send them back to Mexico? Well, Mexico is going to put up a fuss, a big fuss. Okay? Mexico will basically say, no, we're not going to allow you to do that. So then what's Trump going to do? He already threatened to send active duty troops across the border to attack Mexico because of the cartels. He already said he was going to do that. And he's got a bunch of Republican legislators who are going to back him on that. Lindsey Graham being one of them. Okay? So you got these guys who are all set to invade Mexico. So guess what? Now you got a war with Mexico. Okay? I mean, it's obvious that it would be there. All right? Because Mexico has already said, we're not going to let you do this. No, think about this. You got people in this country from other countries. There's a lot of people here from Central Africa. You got a lot of Chinese people. The Chinese, if you deport a whole bunch of illegal Chinese immigrants from this country and send them back to China, those people are dead. They're dead people walking, okay? Because China is going to lock them up and kill them, okay? Because you dared to go against the PRC, all right? So there's a human rights issue right then and there. Secondly, you got people coming from Honduras, South America, whatnot. They're coming up Venezuela. There are a lot of Venezuelans living in this country. You deport them, where are they going to go? Venezuela didn't have any way to take care of them. That's the reason why they come up here in the first place. So then what? Is Venezuela going to say, no, you can't drop these people off? We got no way to take care of them. Well, now you got another humanitarian crisis. So does Donald Trump care about that? No, Donald Trump doesn't care about that because he's got his hand out. he doesn't do anything unless somebody's paying him.
Mm.
So you have private corporations who are going to pay him to let them round these people up and put them in these camps at the border, because the government's going to pay these contractors to do all that. Same thing with the deportation. As long as these people are getting paid to run the buses, run the trucks, load the airplanes, it's up to Donald Trump to figure out how to deal with these governments who don't want these people.
Mm.
Private corporations, they don't care, because all they care about is getting paid.
Money.
And they don't care who pays them. And they're all about taking federal money. So it goes back to what you were saying. The United States going to be printing money to pay these people? Then what? So
Then
not
what?
only
Yeah.
you put this all in one big neat package. Okay. So now you're going to gut the job market because you're taking all these people out of the workforce. Now you're paying private contractors to house and take care of these people, which you know they aren't going to do a very good job. Okay. And then you got to pay to transport these people and make deals with these other countries to take them, because that's the only way they're going to go, is you got to pay these countries to take their people back. That's the only way that's going to work. So again, you're spending money that you don't have to take care of this problem. It's a no-win situation. So
it's a no-win situation.
So can you imagine if they started, if Trump does what he says, he takes office in January, by February, they're going to start rounding people up. And through the first 6 months, his basic first 100 days is when he's going to send out the National Guard, local police, and whoever else he can round up. And they're going to scour every corner of the country, round these people up, and send them down to the border to the camps. We're talking a couple of million people, if not more. They're going to end up rounding up and putting them down there. And then, of course, like I said, you got to pay for all this stuff. So, who's going to pay for all this? Well, the taxpayers don't have any money anymore. And you're going to gut the workforce. So guess what? Okay. The agriculture corporations, or even the small farmers who had these people working for them, are now all of a sudden very labor shortage. Okay, you know what? My farm's going up because I got nobody to work it. I can't grow stuff anymore. So now you got a food problem because they can't grow food. They got no labor. You got other low-end jobs that these people were doing and doing very fine, keeping their nose clean. Well, guess what? Who's going to clean the hotel rooms? Who's going to take care of janitor work? Who's going to pick the vegetables and the cherries and all the other stuff, and all these other jobs that these people are perfectly fine. Landscaper companies are going to be going belly up left and right. So again, it's a total mess simply because of this one guy who's trying to pander to his base. Okay. Like I said, Donald Trump doesn't do anything unless he's being paid for it. So if they'll pay him to do this, he'll do it. If they tell him, no, we changed our mind, he's okay with that. He's okay with that. Donald Trump doesn't care. He doesn't care. As long as he's getting paid, he'll go.
Because a lot of the plans that he started out with did not really pan out at all. I mean, for instance, building that wall.
Donald Trump doesn't know how to do anything. How many times has he been bankrupt in his career? He can't run a business.
That's why
everybody knows
me really.
Yeah, he can't run a business.
How many more Supreme Court judges are we going to get in the next 4 years?
Well, see, that's just it. I don't know.
We may get two new ones.
See, here's the thing. You don't necessarily have to worry about just the federal court. You got to worry about the district courts, okay?
Yes.
The state courts, all right? If you pack them all up with MAGA cultists, which a lot of them are right now, but if you pack them even more, then the justice system in this country is pretty much toast. Okay, if you're not white and wealthy,
and the crazy thing is, like I think back in 2017 or so, Chuck Schumer and all the Dems just fast tracked all the Trump's judges. It's like, oh, we got to worry about the election. So that's what we're in the mess we're in.
Yeah, that's right. See, that's the problem with the Democrats. They're so worried about elections that they don't know how to govern anymore. See, and that's been that way for a long time. And it doesn't look like it's going to change. So that's the system that needs to change. Okay. We need a government that's for the people, by the people, of the people again, because we haven't had that for a long time.
Yeah,
Doesn't seem likely
the
to
closest
happen.
person we came to is really Bernie, but of course the Dems are frightened of Bernie.
Yes.
I mean, they foiled him in 2016 and 2020.
Right. Well, the thing about Bernie is that, like I said before, if we had a younger clone, he probably would get pretty far. Okay. What we need is a whole lot of Bernie Sanders clones coming up through local elections across the country. Okay. That's what we need. And that would straighten out a lot of this mess. If we had a bunch of Bernie Sanders guys coming up through the ranks of the political elites and in state houses and local elections and making their way up to the Congress in Washington, D.C., if we had a flood of those, we could turn things around.
But here's the problem.
But you know,
who's gonna fund them?
Yeah.
Go ahead.
Yeah. You know, the thing is, I kind of wish that we did have Bernie in 2016 and 2020 just because he would have been a good example for these younger people.
Oh, yeah.
Like they would see, oh, God, you know, someone like that actually made it to office, so we can do it too. And but because he's, I mean, we've all seen him being, you know, getting shut out. I think a lot of younger people are probably thinking, well, if he couldn't make it, I can't make it either. I think that's one of the reasons why I would have wanted Bernie.
No, and that's pretty much the truth.
We wouldn't be in this mess right now.
You're right. And it's exactly the truth. A lot of people see this stuff. They're afraid to say anything, but they're thinking that stuff, saying, hey, you know what? If they got that much power to shut these people down, then what am I going to do? You know, I'm just one person. Yeah. What am I going to do? This whole idea of one vote, one person multiplied by millions doesn't resonate with people.
The other thing I wanted to bring up is that we still haven't said anything about AIPAC. They're going to be funding their own candidates, so you're not likely to see Bernie clones getting
we
success.
See how they've been doing, you know, here since October. Jamal Bowman just lost his election because of AIPAC.
$15 million.
Yeah. I know, it's crazy.
Wow.
But that's how much
crazy.
power.
And by the way, Hillary backed AIPAC. Hillary backed. Vladimir too.
You know why? Because they're paying her. You know, again, these people don't do anything unless they're getting paid. That's what it amounts to. Okay, they don't work for the people anymore. They work for whoever's paying them the highest dollar. They're all on the take, and that's.
So are you saying that there's no hope?
We've gone back to the 18th century.
Yeah.
We
should.
With the feudal lords and we are just the serfs.
Well,
we own nothing.
Yeah, I mean that's where we are right now. But I mean, I agree with you.
Property was everything.
The big thing is we should take our government back to the original Continental Congress and the original early 19th century system where, as I mentioned before, all of these congressional legislators that get voted for through their districts, the districts in the states pay their salaries, however much they can afford, and these guys go to Congress and vote for the people they're representing. They don't get these huge salaries. There's no such thing as campaign donors, none of that stuff. Eliminate all of that, and you would see a huge difference in the government of the United States.
Agreed. But how do we get there? That's the challenge.
That's the problem, is you don't have the will of the people to make a change like that. I mean, that's what it would take, is a massive, massive protest across the country of all levels of the social strata going up and saying, hey, you represent us. This is what we want you to do. And this, if you don't do it, we'll find somebody who will. I mean, that's a government for, by, and of the people. But we don't have that right now. Okay.
Well, they don't even teach revolutions in school, except in a really pejorative manner, like, the French Revolution. I mean, I don't know. I can't think of a single scholar who has actually got to say, the French Revolution really had great principles. It's all about bashing that or any kind of, progressive leader, like, say, Thomas Paine.
Well, the other part of it is American history taught in our schools here in this country is a lot different than history you'll find overseas. The books are a lot different because everything in this country is written and told on the narrative of the United States, how great they are and all these good things that they did to get the country started and so on and so forth. Well, you know what? If you go to Europe or if you go to Central Asia, Yeah, American history is written a whole lot different over
A
there.
whole lot different. Yeah. People not happy with it.
Yeah, you go to South America, and it's a whole nother animal down there too, because they still remember what Reagan did in the 80s and gutted all their countries down there. So
American propaganda is almost like Chinese propaganda.
It's funny. As I said, my wife is from China, and she's always comparing the United States to China. Okay. And so she talks about how bad the PRC is and how they treat their people and so on. And I agree with her. Okay. They're not nice people. All right. But at the same time, you look at the United States. Now, I was a career soldier, so I saw a lot of things, but I didn't put two and two together until my last deployment to Afghanistan. So over there, when I had an opportunity to actually see how the American military operates, because I was able to step out of the box, so to speak, and look at it with a different set of eyes. And it was like, I was in shock. Okay. It basically just completely took the breath away. And I'm like, oh my God, I've been part of this for 20 some odd years. Oh my God, what have I been doing? I'm like, but the idea is that the large majority of the Americans are in that lockstep with the American government and the history books that they're printed in the United States and the story that they tell, and that's all they know. So they don't know any different. They've never been outside the country, and so they have no idea. Of course, now my wife tells me that America is still, even despite all these flaws that I'm bringing out to her now, she says it's still better than still better than China. And I'm like, okay, I agree with you to a degree that there's a large difference in that. We don't have the freedoms here in this country like we used to, but we're still a lot better than a lot of other countries.
But it's like we're getting there.
Well, that's just it. We're getting there. We're getting there. So
if you listen, I'm sorry.
No, go ahead.
I'm saying if you listen to some of the people who argue for the Chevron difference, they're saying that by removing all these regulations and rules that are not laws, we're actually increasing the freedom of the average American. I try to get both sides of the argument. So they're saying without the rules, everything has to go back to laws.
Yeah.
And they're thinking that you will get more freedom that way.
No,
but I think it's an avenue for abuse because
it's an avenue for disaster. Because if you look at it like this, it goes back to what we said right at the very beginning. Okay, let's say you've got a corporation that's obviously violating pollution laws, so on and so forth. Well, your only recourse is to sue them. Well, once you sue them, how long is it going to take to work its way through the courts?
500 years.
Bingo.
So
that was the whole point of these regulatory federal agencies, was to cut out all of that and basically go in there and we have all these rules that you have to follow, and they were enforcing it. Well, now they can't. So where we are, you are companies that are obviously violating laws, but they're going to get away with it because they're going to wrap it up in the courts.
Yeah, that's what Trump did anyway. You can't get him. You can't pin him down on anything because he wraps you up in court. Wherever.
Well, it's Donald Trump learned from some of the best. Okay, this stuff's been going on long before him. I mean, he's been suing people and not paying bills for 60 years. Okay, so it's no surprise that he does what he does. I don't fault Donald Trump for who he is now. I fault the system that made him the way he is. Okay. But it goes back to the same thing. You broaden that out to the country. I don't fault Americans for being who they are. I fault the system for making them that way.
Not a cause, right?
Exactly. See, that's the whole point. And how to fix that? Well, you would have to have a massive will of the people that would come together and say, enough's enough. And we're done. Okay, we need to fix this. And basically, what it would take.
And the problem with that too is because we have the influence of the right-wing media.
Well, again, they work for whoever pays them. Okay, and it didn't used to be that bad back in the days when we still had paper newspapers, because ad revenue back in those days really wasn't that big a deal. Okay, but you sold.
And they weren't owned by like a couple of corporations.
Right. Well, they didn't have to be, simply because they could sell paper newspapers and they could keep afloat. But once the digital age come in and did away with all of that, well, they couldn't sell physical newspapers anymore, so they lost everything. So now you have newspaper media and everything across the country going belly up. And now the only news you're forced to get, is from these mega companies like ABC and CNN and Fox, whatever. And these guys are all funded by billionaires, and the government basically tells them what they can print, what they can't print. And it's all about the money, because what the government does is they go in and say, you're going to write this story, you can write this story, but you can't write that one.
The Telecommunications Act of 1996 definitely did not help at all.
Right. But again, that's when we were starting to get into the digital age, and everything was starting to fly. And like I said, you can't generate enough income on online ads to keep your company afloat. So you got to have an outside source of income in order to keep your newspaper afloat. That's how that all started. And now it's to the point now where it's insanity. So, we're stuck between a rock and a hard place. It goes back to like what Mitch and I do. We look after independent journalists through other media beyond the mainstream to get the real news. I mean, most of the news I get from foreign countries. My biggest one is Al Jazeera. I get the majority of my news from CBC Canada, Al Jazeera out of Qatar, and the EU news, and a couple other ones. I listen to the DW out of Germany.
I do that one.
And that one, you know what I mean? But I don't listen to the American news anymore, because it's, most of it is fake in a lot of ways. It's designed to push the government narrative, keep you uninformed. We only want to tell you what we want you to know. And if you decide that you want to learn something else, well, we're going to try and stop you, and so on and so forth. And it's been that way for a couple of decades. Because like I said, I had this issue that was part of my awakening back in 2002, was talking to some reporters who told me the real deal. And I'm like, wow, okay. And it really opened my eyes. And I'm kind of that way ever since. But still, it's kind of one of those things. If you know what to look for, it's out there. You can find it. We haven't been sanctioned, if you want to use that word, telling us that no, we can't listen to Al Jazeera anymore or other news outlets. They haven't stopped us from doing that. So as long as I'm okay, nobody stops me, I'm going to continue and go from there. So this whole other business. So I got one last thing to throw at you. Okay. So you guys are old enough to remember all of the CIA nonsense back down in South America in the 80s, right? Remember that? So Bolivia just had a coup attempt last week.
Vaguely, yeah.
Right? So it was all over the news for a couple of days. And the army basically jammed themselves into the presidential building, so on, try to take over the government. They threw them back and all that kind of stuff. And the rumor going around was that the CIA was backing it, like in the old days. Right?
I heard that.
Okay. Well, the other rumor going around now is that the Bolivian president did this for himself because he wanted the attention.
Okay.
So now here's the thing. From what we remember of the 1980s, what did the CIA do down there? And how did they explain all of that? Well, they didn't explain anything. Okay. But what was the narrative coming out of South America? Remember that? Well, guess what? It's the same play. It's the same game that they played in the 80s that down here in Bolivia. Okay. CIA most likely went down there because they don't here. Well, let me tell you the narrative. Bolivia right now has been selling lithium to the Chinese.
They have a giant discovery of lithium. Yeah, I saw that.
Americans don't like that. And they've been trying to get them to stop doing it. Well, Bolivia is basically going, we'll do what we want. Okay. Well, again, the Americans don't like that. So what better way to get their hands on that lithium because they've already got Argentina in their back pocket. So what better way to get more of it and cut off the Chinese?
Yeah, I was going to say, for the connection, I mean, it's really breaking up.
Yeah. Well, we're just about done. But like I said, I was going to leave that with you.
Oh.
What better way to get that lithium back on the American side of the house? Take over the government in Bolivia, throw the president out, and then the CIA backs whoever takes over down there. And guess what? Now who's into the lithium mines? The Americans.
Right. Are they in there? Are they in there now?
No.
No,
yet.
because not yet. Yeah.
Not yet. But like I said, I don't really know what happened because there's been so many different stories. So it's another one of those wait and see kind of deals. I want to see what's going to happen down the road 2 or 3, 4 weeks from now. What kind of story we're going to get?
Yeah.
I'm quite sure that story is not over yet.
It'd be good to keep it, stick a pin in it and keep an eye on it.
Yep. Like I said, Americans typically don't like to change their game. So what works before, they'll keep trying it and see if it works again. So I wouldn't surprise me a bit if this is another one of those same game scenario that they tried in the 80s. Oh, let's see if it works again. Wouldn't surprise me a bit. So, what do you think, guys? Enough to fill your heads up?
Well, I have some research to do this week.
There you go. Yeah, me too. Yeah, I'm just going to be watching the news feeds just to see what comes up, see what kind of new stuff comes up here.
Yeah. I'm really interested in the whole Chevron deference and how it will impact the society going forward.
Well, here's what I will tell you. They're going to shut that down. They're going to shut down the news media about that. It made headlines with the Supreme Court, and now you're going to see it disappear.
Interesting. I will, of course, I'm not listening to them. I'm going to do my own,
Oh, yeah. No. I'm saying is if you want to know about it, you're going to have to do some digging.
Yeah. There are a lot of lawyers on TikTok that are speaking about it. So I listen to them. Yeah. I'm kind of putting things together. I may write something about it.
There you go. Yeah. That'd be smart
interesting thing. Because I want to know more about it, but I also look at it as the unraveling of America.
Right.
How possible it is for us to live here safely going forward in time. Are they trying to destroy the American life?
Well, they are. There's a large faction of the United States population, the rich, wealthy elites, who want to send the country back to the way the southern states were run back before the Civil War. Okay,
that's terrible.
You had a group of wealthy white owners who owned everything down there, and they ran it like an oligarchy, and they liked it that way, and they want to go back to it.
And that's not good.
No.
Because we have to live here too, right?
That's why they all have these plantation-style houses.
Well, there's that too.
And castles.
But the big thing is that's one of the things that I read about in the news.
Shows like Downton Abbey.
Right. That's just it. That's one of the things that I've been, watching in the news. Some of these stories coming out, with Project 2025, and that kind of goes along with it. These same people, that's what they want. They want to do away with the Constitution. They want to do away with all this other stuff, and they want to take the country and put it back to the way it was when they were in charge before the Civil War. And the rest of us, well, the social structure back in those days, unless you had a lot of money, this was definitely not pleasant.
I would say they actually wanted to be like England. That's why they are so obsessed with the British monarchy. If you think about it.
And you're right. And you're very right. They would set up some sort of feudalism type system, okay, where you have one autocratic leader and you have all of the nobility underneath. Obviously they wouldn't call it that, but you would have that kind of a structure, and it would drift down from there. And the majority of the people, irregardless of race, color, creed, or what have you, would all be in the lower classes. And that's how they like it. That's what they want.
and and Trump at what, in their 80s. Only monarchs are ever that old. It's
True.
sort of like, and we have the same
That's a good
idea of like, the king can do no wrong. The president. Yep.
Right. Well, there you go. I mean, look at guys like Jeff Bezos. Okay. I mean, how much can he get away with? Okay.
Oh.
Okay. Think about that. I mean, the guy basically he can do whatever he wants, and nobody's going to touch him because he got so much money.
The employees are like serfs. I mean,
yeah,
he's forcing them to work during a tornado.
Yeah, that was crazy.
Like I think
I saw that.
Kentucky about.
Well, and then you got guys
crazy.
like
So.
Yeah. Well, you guys got like Bill Gates, who's buying up all the agriculture out in the Midwest right now.
Yeah.
Okay. Think about that. And he says he's doing it because he's trying to save the land, save everything. Well, you know what?
When everybody's starving, he alone will have food.
Bingo. That's what it's all about. When everybody starts getting hungry, guess who's got all the food? Bill Gates. See? And I'm like, yeah, okay. You tell everybody what you want, but I'm sorry. I study world history way too much. You're following a pattern that's it was way too obvious. No. But what are you going to do? They're letting them get away with it. So it remains to be seen. I'm kind of curious, as far as what's coming down the pike. As I said before, I'm going to be watching the news real close here the next few weeks to see if anything new comes out of the stuff we talked about today. And, if it's noteworthy, I'll let you know. And, we can get together again and we can discuss all this stuff all over again. Big thing I'm looking at is, obviously Ukraine, something's going to happen there by the end of the summer, one way or another. All right. How that's going to turn out, anybody's guess right now. Nobody knows.
By the way, my
what they're going to do about these. We're gonna cut this short here real quick, But as I said, the situation in Gaza is going to get worse. We really don't know how that's going to work out. Everybody's you got half the government that's pushing Israel to chase after Hezbollah, and if anybody has any smarts whatsoever, they know that Hezbollah is just basically going to carpet bomb Israel. And they have the means to do it. So it's like, seriously, what are you people thinking?
And we don't know if Russia gave them some goodies.
Well, they did by proxy.
By proxy, yeah.
They ran everything down to Iran, and then Iran's giving it to them. That's how that.
There's quite likely to have some advanced weaponry with Hezbollah. It wouldn't surprise me.
Yeah. No, they're already talking about that. They've got it. It's just a matter of whether they're pushing them to use it or not. So, it's like I said, this through the summer here, life is going to get really interesting. I'm kind of anxious to see how that's going to turn out. So we'll do this we'll do this down the road again.
Whenever you're ready, my friend.
As soon as I make up another list of a lot of stuff that we should be worried about, I'll let you know. No, that's okay. So I'm going to let you guys go. I appreciate you coming on, and I'm going to close up shop here. Okay.
Okay. Cool.
All right. Okay. Thank you, guys.
Okay. Nice chatting with you, Francis.
Okay. Thank you.
Bye.
Bye.
All right. Talk to you later, Mitch.
Okay, my friend. Take it easy. No problem. I'll talk to you later.
All right. Thanks. Bye.
All right, Charles. Bye.
So that's the end of my show today. I'm going to set this up short. We had quite a discussion. There's a lot of things going on. And like I said, we're ground level people. We live our lives just like everybody else. We're not rich elites, anything like that. So we worry about all the same normal things that the average citizens should be worried about. So hopefully you'll get something out of all of this and maybe make you think a little bit. So I'll talk to you again next week. Sláinte. While I still have your attention, I want to tell you about how you can support this podcast and my efforts in general. This podcast will continue to remain free to subscribe to on all the major mobile podcast apps, on my YouTube channel, Krana Biha, and for the first 30 days on my Substack page, Krana Biha, the Tree of Life at Substack.com. With that in mind, I'm asking for donations of any amount. decided that I would rather ask for donations instead of charging subscriptions, so everyone has an opportunity to watch or listen to this podcast everywhere in the world. All I'm asking for is help in defraying the cost to produce and distribute this podcast and maintain my website. I have set up a donation tab on the Village Oak Tree webpage at rss.com and a donation page on my website at www.crownandbeyond.com, which are all linked to PayPal for your security. This way you can use any currency you wish from around the world, providing PayPal is available to you. Any amount's appreciated. Now, about my website. The easiest way to find it is to copy it from the background behind me if you're watching this video. If you're listening to an audio version, copy the website name from the podcast logo shown. Search for it and enjoy your visit. Lastly, I'm trying to sell some copies of my book, Fugitives in the New United States, which can be found at major book retailers around the world, such as Amazon, Barnes & Noble, and Lulu. You can also buy from me direct through the bookstore page on my website. Fugitives in the New United States is available in hardcover, paperback, and digital form. Free if you're a Kindle subscriber. It's written for young adults and older, so it's safe. If this were a movie, it'd be rated PG. Look for Fugitives in the New United States at your favorite book retailer and enjoy it. If I sell enough, I'll find the time to write the second book in this series. So I want to thank you for your support, even if it's just a like and a subscribe on my social media accounts. Sláinte. Thank you for listening to the show today. I hope you enjoyed it, and you'll return again next week for another episode of The Village Oak Tree. Please like, subscribe, and reply on the YouTube video or audio version. This helps with spreading the word about what I'm trying to do, which is to shout out to the world about all the bad things our governments are doing to us. As I say goodbye this week, I wish to leave you with this Irish blessing as you go about your day. May your hand always be stretched out in friendship and never in want. Slán go fóill.